So Erik Sosolik, you were promoted to partner at Chilton, Wilcox and Fortenberry, a local accounting firm, in January of 2018. And this was an interesting, fascinating thing that I read in your nomination form. You went to your interview in 2010 with your now bosses wearing a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle t-shirt.
I did.
So tell us the story of that and what at the time you expected to come from that encounter.
So my wife and I came down here to interview with a different firm, and the interview went well, but they didn't have a position for me, and so we went over to spend some time with some family, and it was a weekend of a UTOU game. It was right after September 15th, I believe, and so we were just here in a flash just to do this interview, and we were sitting around talking, and a family friend came over. We had just had our twin daughters. And he came over to see them, and he asked why we were in town, and we told him, well, I was here to interview. And he said, well, were you here to interview with Chilton Wilcox? And I said, I don't even know who Chilton Wilcox is. I'd never heard of the firm. And he said, well, he said, I want to make a phone call. And so he stepped away and called either Troyce or John or Randy Chilton. And they were interested in meeting with me, and they wanted to know if I could come right then. And I warned them that I just had on golf pants and a Ninja Turtle t-shirt, and that's really all I had anywhere near me. We were staying out of town, and my clothes were clear across town. And they said, no, that's fine, come on. And so I sat down with those guys and sat with my back to the windows in the conference room, and 2 to 3 hours later, we were still talking, and I didn't really know what to expect to come out of it. That was my first meeting with them, my first ever conversation with them, but I really liked my first impression. And so I left, and I think they called me that evening and said, even though I wasn't expecting it, that they wanted to make me an offer to come to possibly work for them, and they wanted to know if I could come by again in the morning. And so I came by the next morning, and they made their offer, and I asked them if I could have a day or two to think about it. And so my wife and I loaded up and headed back to Austin. And by the time we got back to Austin, we had decided that, everything has a reason, and this must be where we're supposed to be. So we decided that we'd move back to San Angelo, and it's been the best decision I think I've made. And, the Ninja Turtle t-shirt thing is a joke, but at the same time, I may still have that t-shirt, so if my wife hasn't thrown it out.
So you mentioned that when you went to your initial interview, you sat with your back to the window. So you went in, it was daylight.
It was.
You were talking and
it was.
Apparently engaged in a really meaningful conversation. We're surprised when you turn around and all of a sudden it was dark out.
Absolutely, because the game was an afternoon game, so it was dark, and my wife's calling me or texting me trying to figure out where I am. Of course, I left her alone with both the girls who were about a month old, which I'm probably lucky I survived that. But it was one of those things that time just flew, and you didn't realize what was happening because it was such a good experience.
And of course, those girls are one of the reasons that you're back in San Angelo, because
they absolutely are.
The thunderbolt of having twin girls all of a sudden that you were taking care of put an end to the good times in Austin.
It did. We moved down there as a newly married couple, and we had a blast going everywhere and doing things. But when you aren't thinking about your own welfare any longer and having to keep up with children, Austin is a little bit intimidating, and we just decided we needed to get closer to family. So even though when we left Austin we were never coming back, we came back home. And
you grew up here in San Angelo?
I did not. I grew up north of Abilene in Monday, Texas.
Okay.
I came to ASU and graduated with a bachelor's and a master's degree from ASU. And my wife grew up in El Dorado, and so we ended up meeting here.
Very good. So I mentioned to you before the camera started rolling, I don't know that I've ever seen nomination forms that were as effusive of the nominee as the ones that your coworkers submitted. And one of your coworkers wrote in the nomination form, "The one thing about him that is so different from anyone else I have worked for is his ability to make you feel like his equal rather than his employee." Where does that come from, Erik?
I've always had the philosophy that I want to show people how to work. And I believe if you'll work like I do, I feel like I've been successful and you can be successful too. And part of that is I can't treat you any different than I'd want to treat anybody. And I'm not going to ask you to do something that I wouldn't be willing to do myself or can do myself. It's not fair of me to ask you to do a job if I can't do the job, unless I have physical limitations that I can't do it. And so I'm also not going to put something on someone that I don't believe they can do. It doesn't do anybody good to be given something that it's obvious they can't do and let them fail. It's just stressing people out that way. I want to be a stress reliever. I want to make everybody's experience good. And part of being a leader to me is making sure that everybody is okay. I feel like I'm always going to be okay. I'll make myself okay. And I'm going to find a way to make everybody else feel okay too.
And I think one of the maybe manifestations of that in your work as partner, it's not big cigars and golf afternoons. You know, one of the 3 partners at your firm is checking every piece of work that you guys produce, no matter how large or how small.
Absolutely. Everything that leaves our office is checked by a partner. And that is due to a quality of work and that we want to put out.
Well, one of the things your colleagues seem to be amazed about is your approach hasn't changed you at all since you made a partner. And it sounds like that's been a very conscientious effort on your part.
It is, but at the same time, I think it's just who I am. I didn't see any need to feel like I'm better than anybody else just because I was honored to become partner at a young age that I am. I'm still learning every day, and they still can remind me or teach me of everything. So if I don't feel like I'll ever know everything, and to get an arrogance or to feel like I'm above someone, to me that's not me. That's not the way I am. I'm an equal. I want to treat everybody like an equal, and I feel like in that you gain respect, and respect is what you need to be successful.
Do you think your fast track to being partner is more a result of your ability or your attitude?
I think it's probably a combination of both. My abilities are coming along. I've had some great teachers, and I know that my attitude has played in. I've never rushed to believe that I'm better than I really am. I've never tried to push someone into thinking that I deserve more. I feel like my actions will prove whether or not I deserve more.
Your colleagues also say you're typically one of the first people in the office in the morning and one of the last to leave. Is that something that you feel a responsibility to sort of set that example?
To some degree, yes, because, and I joke with one of my colleagues all the time that eventually he'll work more than I do, and I give him a hard time about it. Even from a week-to-week basis, I give him a hard time about it. But the truth is I feel like if I lead, everyone will follow. Now, I don't expect everyone to do what I do. I am very lucky to have family support like I do, to have a wife that understands what I'm doing like I do and what it does for our family. And it doesn't work for everyone, but it works for us. And there's a lot of thought and a lot of effort into making decisions about work and about our lives and what we're doing that I put into it. And part of that is there's certain times of the year that I know I have to buckle down, and I put myself in a position where I know to be successful, I feel like I have to do certain things, and it works for me. And so if I'm there before everyone and I'm there after everyone, no one can say that I didn't set an example for everyone. Now, like I said, I don't expect everyone to do what I do, but it works for me.
Your colleagues are also impressed that you managed to strike what they believe is a really strong balance between your work life and your family life. How do you go about trying to ensure that you've got a good balance between those two responsibilities?
It's a lot of communication with my wife, I need her to tell me, you absolutely need to be here, you absolutely need to do that. It's a lot of planning at the first of the week. I've had a lot of good advice from prior partners and current partners about mistakes they've made, the way they've handled things. Just being open-minded to everything, and a lot of it too is I have the ability to drive through however tired I am, and I will sacrifice sleep to make sure that my family's happy, my work is happy, and everything, because I'm fortunate enough to be healthy, to be young, and to be successful.
In addition to work and family, you're also involved in the community in a number of ways. You're the treasurer of the United Way Board and of the board of the Concho Valley Food Bank. Talk about what those agencies do and how their work moves you.
So I started with the food bank by, they have a Food to Kids program, and they have a program where meals go out to the schools on Fridays, where kids who are less fortunate are provided a sacked meal to take home on the weekends that have a protein and crackers and stuff like that I don't think many people realize that we have people in our community that are that way. And what I would do is I have a pickup. I'd go over to the food bank. I'd pick up these 5 or 6 bins. I'd drive over to an elementary school and I'd drop them off, and that's all I did. And I built a relationship with Greg Duke there at the food bank, and eventually they asked me to be on the board, and I've been on the board ever since. And it's been a very good experience. It's a very successful board. I believe Greg is unbelievable with what he's able to do with that organization and able to provide food services here. And then the United Way, I got involved as a loan executive, which is a program where John and Troyce ask, and we ask now, employees to go and donate their time to go out and try to raise funds for the United Way to do their programs. And so I started there as a loan executive, and then I believe I did 2 years worth of that and met them and built relationships with them, and then I backed away a little while. But Troyce has always been on the United Way board, and his 3 years fell off this last year, and he asked if I would be willing, and the board had asked if I'd be willing to step in. And so I stepped in as a board member, and it just so happened that the treasurer position was open, and they asked if I would do that. And so those two organizations are indispensable to San Angelo and what they do and how they take care of the people and the less fortunate. And it's just amazing to be associated with those two.
So there's always an axiom for boards that they always want an attorney and an accountant.
Yes.
And so as a CPA, I mean, your services are always going to be in high demand for nonprofit organizations in our community. How do you decide which volunteer efforts that you want to dedicate yourself to?
It's just well, first off, it has to do with, how much time do I feel like I have to devote to those and my family and my work. And from that point, it's just a feeling thing. If it just grabs me and calls me and I feel like it keeps coming back around. I think you'll notice in life that you may have an idea and it may go away, and yet something else comes up and reminds you of that idea. And if it comes up 2 or 3 times, it ought to trigger you to look into it and see exactly what's going on. And so I do a lot of it by just, if I'm put in that place and it shows up, maybe that's what I'm supposed to be doing.
Your nomination form also contained all sorts of adjectives. Some of them I thought were really interesting. They included gritty, courageous, supportive, caring, respectful, diligent, capable. How would you describe yourself?
I feel like I am a silent leader. I'm not looking for accolades. This is a great honor. It's unexpected, and I just do what I do, just to try to set an example for everyone else, to try to be successful, to try to take care of my family. And to describe myself, I try to stay humble, is what I try to do.
You sound very much like a servant leader, so I'm curious what that means to you, that phrase.
A servant leader, you know, I don't necessarily know a true definition, but taking the word servant, you know, I said it earlier, I try to help everyone, and I try to take the time to explain things. I don't expect people just to know it because I know it. I try to teach, I try to help everybody learn, and I try to help everybody be comfortable. If somebody needs a cup of coffee, I'm not above getting somebody a cup of coffee, because that's what they need. And that is, to me, the way that you gain someone's respect is if you're willing to do for them what you'd like for them to do for you. It's pretty much the golden rule.
Again, one of your colleagues wrote of you, he is literally the best boss anyone could ask for. Erik, how do you define leadership?
To me, leadership is being an example for everyone. If you're an example, you gain respect. And if you can gain everyone's respect, you're going to be a good leader. And you don't have to gain that respect by being a dictator. You don't have to gain that respect by demanding that respect. People will follow you if you're successful. People will follow you if you are courteous to them and if you're helpful to them. And to me, being a leader is all about, can you get everyone to buy in to what you believe? But you have to believe in what you're doing, or you can't get anyone to buy into it.
Who is a leader who has inspired and shaped you?
I've had a lot of leaders. You know, I could say bosses, I could say coworkers, but I think a lot of people would agree that I'm probably modeled a lot after my dad. Unknowingly, I do a lot of things like he does. You know, treat people the way I do, work hard. It's just the way I grew up. And so it comes natural to me to do things the way that I do them.
Well, I guess that's not surprising, because your sister is a former 20 under 40
Yes.
honoree.
Yes, she is. She is. She's very successful in her own right. She did beat me to this honor, even though she's younger than me. So she can say that she beat me to something. But we have both been very successful. We grew up in a great home. We were both valedictorian of our high school classes. We both graduated from ASU with master's degrees. And she actually has a partial doctorate, has some hours in her doctorate degree. And that's all due to our upbringing. It's all due to where we grew up, how we were taught, and the expectations that we were under. And when I say expectations, it was not a, you're going to be this way and you're in trouble. It was a, we know you can be successful, now go do it.
So Erik Sosolik, it's a big honor to be one of the 20 under 40. Congratulations.
Thank you.